What was the rush at Passover time? Couldn't God have given the Jews a little bit more time so we could have left with bread? Welcome back. I'm Gila Ross, host of the Power Up podcast, where we share short, relatable insights that you can use to upgrade and impact your everyday life.
I think that's what we discussed last week, why there's so much prep and what does that point us in the direction of. And thank you so much. So whatever, and it's up on the podcast if anyone wants to listen to it. But this week we are actually going to look at something different, okay? A different question to regarding Pesach, okay? So a little bit of background. There are two beginnings of the year in Judaism. There are two beginnings, right, in Jewish history in Judaism. One is Rosh Hashanah, which is the beginning. New Year.
The New Year.
Yeah, Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of the New Year. And then what does it commemorate? What began in there?
The dead. Poor. Is that what you mean? Like the dead people and poor people?
No, I mean like Rosh Hashanah, we like, what do we commemorate? Like we say it's the beginning of the year, but what makes it the beginning of the year? Like what's
new start, new beginnings.
Right. So what are we commemorating?
A new beginning.
So what started back in history? What started on Rosh Hashanah? Harder question. The creation of man, right? Rosh Hashanah is commemorates. It's the beginning of the Jewish year, but it's specifically the beginning of the Jewish year because that is when man was created, right? All those years back, 5,000 whatever, how many years ago it was. So it commemorates the creation of man. Pesach, Passover, what does that commemorate? It's also a beginning. What began? The freedom. Jews leaving, but that, if we're going to follow that to the end, that's actually an ending.
Freedom.
Freedom, yeah.
The start of?
Judaism.
Yes, it is the beginning of us becoming the Jewish people, right?
I remember what you said previously. Sorry? I remember what you said previously in another discussion.
In another discussion. Wow, you're on it. You're on it.
Can't remember a lot, but I remember that.
Yes. So okay. So there are two different. There are two. So these are the two beginnings in Judaism. There's Rosh Hashanah, which commemorates the beginning of mankind, and there is Pesach, Passover, which commemorates the beginning of the Jewish people, right? Because I think it's important to bear in mind is that we often talk about Pesach and we talk about Passover as we're commemorating the freedom, and it is the freedom, but we have to understand that the freedom was for a purpose. And freedom, we came out of Egypt, we came out of slavery in order to become the Jewish people, and all that means, which is what that means again is a discussion for a different time. But there is an incredible energy. So in Judaism, we believe that the year is kind of like the different months, the different days, the different festivals, they all have a different energy, right? And that energy of Passover comes every year. In fact, Kabbalistically, they say that the energy is kind of like it's not like because we came out of Egypt, it now has that energy of coming out of slavery, sorry. It's because there is that energy of breaking free, right? Of coming out of slavery, etc. That is why Passover happened during Passover time, because that's the energy of Passover. And every year when it comes round to this time of the year, this is the energy. So what is the energy of this year? So the word Pesach, trick question. Does anyone know what the word Pesach actually means? Literal translation of what the word Pesach actually means.
Passover.
It's to pass over.
To pass over, exactly, right? To pass over. What was the passing over? The literal passing over.
To the passing over of the houses.
Yes. So who's that? It's Mel. What?
Oh, it's Ilana.
So, oh, Ilana. Okay, hi. Nice to have you here with us.
Sorry.
Okay, so you're right. You're 100% right that what it was is that the Jews had a mitzvah to put blood on their doorposts, and God passed over the houses of the Jewish people when during the plague of the firstborn, and they were saved. So that is what it's talking about. But there's a deeper level about that, and there's a deeper depth to it, which is that the energy is one of jumping over, right? Of leaping over. Because usually when we want to grow, when we want to become better, when we want to improve, it's a very, very step-by-step, slow, arduous process, right? We move a little bit, and then we probably slip a little bit back, and then we move a little bit forward, right? The energy of Pesach is particularly strong, and it's an energy where we can make massive strides, and it goes back to the night when they came out of Egypt. Because here's the fascinating thing about it. So the night of Seder, the 2 nights of Seder, is called Leil Shemorim, which means that they are guarded nights. They are nights where, for example, when it comes down to Passover, we only say the first paragraph of Shema, right? Because it's a night where God is looking out for us, right? Just like God looked out for us on that in Egypt and took us out. So God is looking out for us at this point on Passover as well. Okay, so where does this come back to? So we're told that when the Jews were in Egypt, they were on the 49th level of impurity. What does that mean? It means that Kabbalistically, or whatever, on a deeper level, there are apparently 50 levels of impurity, right? 50 levels of separation, I guess, from God, right? Now, the Jews were on the 49th level, and had they descended one more level, then they would have been lost forever, right? Whatever that means, we'll discuss that in a minute. And so what we're told as it happens then is that God jumped in and saved them at that very minute, right? Because the story of how the Jews came out of Egypt happened very, very quickly, right? Why do we eat matzah? Does anyone know? Why does it have time to rise? Because so there's actually 2 reasons, right? There's when we say in the Seder, there is 2 reasons. You're right. There's a reason because this is the bread of our slavery. Because it's, if you think about matzah, it's a very hard food to digest, so it kind of like stays keeps you full for long. I don't know if it keeps you full for long. Not my kids don't. They're like, I'm always hungry. Although I think it's just psychological of knowing that I can't have everything that I really. Yes, right. But there's also the idea of that the Jews left Egypt in such a rush that the bread didn't have time to rise, right? So that's why it became common. Now, what's the rush? What's the rush? God did 10 plagues. He's going to split the sea. Like, what's the rush? Give the Jews an extra hour to make their bread rise. And we don't have to do any of this stuff. We don't have to clean our house for things. We don't have to worry about what we're going to eat for 8 days, right? Like, what is the rush? Any ideas of what could possibly have been the rush during coming out of that, during the rush at that moment that the Jews had to, that God said, you have to leave right now, or that's it. Just think. It is to do with the levels. You're right, and that's the reason why we're given. I'm not so comfortable with that on a simplistic level, because what does it mean? What does it mean? In 1 hour, they would have been left, like what would they have done that was so terrible in that 1 hour that they would have gone beyond the point of return? Like, it's very, very hard in Judaism for a person to leave Judaism so far that they're beyond the point of return. Right? Like, that's not what Judaism teaches us at all. There's always a way back. There's always a return. There's always, so what does it mean? What was this rush? Any ideas? No? All right. So I'm going to give you a new idea, and hopefully this idea will resonate with you. So what happened here is that this was the birth of the Jewish people. right? And if you think about life, right, everything goes after the beginning. If you think about, let's say, for example, you know, the conception of a child. If, God forbid, there's a age of 12, it makes much less of an impact, right? But a problem in the beginning gets amplified, right? It plays out throughout it, right? The beginning is really, really, really important, right? And Yael will back me up on this, because this is your field, and you're saying the first, you know, research shows about the first 2 years of a life, but like even more so from the point of conception, and the further away you get from it, conception is right. So thank you, Yael, right? That it really is, and like that point of conception is you know, anything that you, whatever, it's so important. And that is an analogy to the spiritual world. The same thing, that everything in the beginning has to whatever's the beginning is how it's going to play out. So this was the beginning of the Jewish people, right? And the question is, how do we access spirituality, right? How do we access spirituality? So spirituality does not exist in time or space, right? There's no such, you know, there's, you know, we're told God exists beyond time, right? God is not bound by time. It's not, you can't sort of access, right? Obviously we exist, but we are physical beings, right? But the soul lives on beyond it. Spirituality is accessed beyond time and space. So the more that the less that we expand time, the more that we access spirituality. What do I mean by that? And I'll give you an example, and hopefully this will clarify it for you. I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you feel like you either you hear something, or you speak to someone, or you read something, or you see something, and you're inspired, and you're like, I really want to take this on. And the next question that comes up to you is like, but what's the best way to take it on, right? Anyone relate to that? You have that question of like, but what should I do with this inspiration? And you think to yourself, you know what, I'm going to give myself a day or two to think about it. What usually happens next? You forget about it, right? You forget about it. And I think I'm going to go out in here and say that I think we can all relate to that, right? You can all relate to that feeling of being, we've got some yeses on Instagram, that feeling of being inspired. And then the next thing you say is like, but what do I do with this? Let me think what the most effective way to do it, right? What happens here is you're like expanding the time. And what happens is the spirituality, the inspiration dies in that time. There is, in Hebrew, there is a word that's called zerizut, which means, it's a very hard word to translate. I don't know what the English word that they call it is alacrity, which I don't know whoever uses that word in like normal conversation. I don't know what enthusiasm, haste, but it's more than just enthusiasm. It's like acting fast, right? Acting fast. Now it's not to be confused with acting impulsively, right? Obviously there's a time and place for thinking and being strategic about things. But the idea here is that if we want to access that spiritual world, we have to act quickly. We have to act quickly. And that's why did God say, I have to save you right now? It's not Ryan, you're asking a great question. We'll get to it in a minute. Ryan's asking, what should I do with this inspiration? Which is a great question. It's not that the Jews would have done something so terribly. The problem with it, had God not acted right then, is that there would have been time. And that spirituality would have been diminished, right? Like the electric, like it was the beginning of the Jewish people. It had to happen fast, right? It had to happen really, really fast. There had to be that shrinking of time, because the more we shrink time, the more that we can access that spirituality. And if you think about it, what is matzah? What is matzah? What's the difference between matzah and chametz? Yeah, unleavened bread. And unleavened is, again, one of those words that I love, because like who uses unleavened, like, oh, I'm going to the shops now, would you like a loaf of unleavened bread? No, a loaf of leavened bread, please, right? But practically speaking, what is it? What's the halakhic definition of matzah? Does anyone know?
Not risen.
Exactly. Baked in less than 18 minutes. It is defined by the amount of time. You bake it for 17:59 seconds. It is matzah. You let it bake for 3 extra seconds, and it's chametz, right? That's it. It is time. It is time, right? And there's an idea, there's a phrase that and I'm going to say it to you in Hebrew because I think the word is interesting. It says, mitzvah haba liyadcha, right? A mitzvah that comes to your hand, al tachmitzena, which sounds like the word chametz, right? Which, what does it mean? It means just like dough, right? If you let it rise, it will become chametz, right? You cannot use it on Passover. So too, a mitzvah that comes to your hand, if you have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, an opportunity to do a good thing, and the same thing is with inspiration, and you let it, and you let time passes, it diminishes, right? It diminishes, like it sours. You lose a little bit of the spark for it, and I think it's something, you know. Has anyone ever experienced this? You know, you get an opportunity to do a mitzvah and you're like, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it the next day. And what happens?
It doesn't happen.
You forget,
Something
other things happen, something else happens, or you know, I mean, I remember a lot of times this would happen to me is that I would, you know, like when someone has a baby or something, like they do a meal train. Is that what they call it here? A meal train?
Like a meal rota.
Yeah, meal rota, where you can do it. Yeah. And like someone will send out an email, right? And I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll do that. And then what happens is like 3 months later, I'm like, oh my goodness, like your baby's 3 months already and I haven't yet signed up for the rota, right? Whereas if I take the email and I'm like, okay, yeah, let me deal with it right now, then it happens.
Trying to action everything, isn't
it? Seize the moment.
Okay. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm going to throw out a question that I think Ryan asked, which is a good question. So what do we do with inspiration?
You act on it.
Yeah. You have to act on it, right? And I think the thing that, yes, Joe as well, you have to use it. The thing I think that often trips us up is we get into this mindset of like, but what do I do with it? And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do with it, as long as you do something. Do the first thing that comes to mind, right? What's the worst thing that happens, right? You take, there's a few different things that can happen, right? Let's say you get inspired and you take something on and you take the first thing that comes to mind on, and let's just say it's the wrong thing, right? So you'll have done the wrong mitzvah, right? Great. The other thing that can happen is that you can take something too hard on, right? And then you can fail. But again, it's not really failure. As long as you have the mindset, this is not failure, this is a learning opportunity, then that's fine. So you can recalibrate and say, you know what, actually I took off more than I could chew. So let me back off and do it. And I think once you've actioned it, right? Once you've said, okay, this is what I'm going to do, then is when it's a time to sort of think about it and say, you know what, like, how's that going for me? How's that going for me? I think that is for it. And yes, there is, for anyone that is familiar with, I think it's Mel Robbins' 5-second rule. Anyone knows about it? The 5-second rule. It's fantastic. A fantastic idea. But basically, she teaches that, you know, whenever you want to do, you know, like sometimes you have to do something, but you don't actually want to do it, right? Like this happens a lot to me when I'm going for a jog, right? And I'm like, oh, I really don't want to go, especially when it's like raining outside and it's like cold and raining. And it's like, so it's the 5-second rule. You just say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you go, right? Or like, I think for fundraising calls as well, like most people, I'm sitting next to like a master fundraiser who loves making those calls, but for a lot of us, it's very uncomfortable, right? Yeah. To make those calls, to ask people to participate in the opportunity to support a valuable charity, right? But again, you do like the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you just do it. So you go for it. So to sum up where we're up to right now is that there was a rush at Passover because the way that we access spirituality is by minimizing the time gap. And interestingly enough, one of the first rules in the Shulchan Aruch is the Jewish code of law, right? That talks about how we're supposed to live out our life. And this is an interesting one, and it's it might be hard to hear, but it's this idea, right? And it says that it talks about how we're supposed to get out of bed in the morning, and it says that we're supposed to get out of bed. We're supposed to begin the day like a lion, which doesn't mean roaring at anyone that's next to us because we're not morning people who haven't had our coffee. just have to put that out there as a disclaimer, right? But it means that we have to have that. We have to have that, like that
passion.
The passion, right? The jump out of bed with an enthusiasm. And interestingly, I think where that comes from,
the 5-second rule.
The 5-second rule can help us do it, but I think where it comes from is the more we connect with our ultimate purpose, the more we realize how much meaning there is to our life and how much opportunity there is to our life. I think the more we are motivated to make the most out of that day, right? And obviously, you know, it starts with the night before, we're going to sleep early, etc., all, you know, all the fun stuff that I think we're all
open at night.
Yes. Yeah, the problem is that, like, you know, like our kids are waking up like lions, and that's not necessarily so right, the other side of the lion. But again, it's the idea, it's the idea that when the start of things is really, really important, right? The start, everything goes after the start, right? And when we start our day, we want to start with that enthusiasm, with that haste, so that we can access that spirituality. And really, you know, we're coming up to Passover. It's 10 days or so to Passover, coming up to Seder night, and there really is that incredible energy, right? And I know, like, for a lot of us, we're thinking of between now and then, there's maybe a little bit to do, right? And I think someone on Instagram wrote that the more you know exactly what you have to do, knowledge is power. It's true. The more you know what you have to do, the less intimidating it is to actually do it, because you have to check for places where there are not chametz. You do not have to do the spring cleaning and the dusting and all that things. And there's also, you can sell your chametz, right? You don't have to get rid of it all. You can lock it up. You can, you know, if there are parts of your house, toys or whatever, that you're worried that there's chametz and you don't have to clean, you can sell them very, very easily. There's a form that you can get in touch with me, and I will send it to you, and you can very, very easily sell your chametz, which is a very easy way to fulfill the mitzvah as well. But when it comes actually to Pesach, we're going to have this incredible energy, right? There is that energy of, we can go beyond ourselves, right? We can access things. And if we want to sort of access that, that energy, the way that we should do it is by actioning it right away, right? By actioning it right in that way. It doesn't matter what or how we do it. Just take one thing, right? Just take one thing and action it right away, because that is how we hold on to the spirituality, by sort of minimizing that time gap between when the idea forms and we actually do it, because that is really spirituality. It's that minimizing of time, which is the energy of Passover. So I want to thank everyone for joining us. Wish you all a wonderful Passover.
Thank you for taking the time to listen. To schedule a complimentary discovery call with Gila, please email gilaross@gmail.com. You can also learn more from Gila on Instagram. It's Gila Ross. And please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out. Have a wonderful day.